Nerd theory. Let me just maximize this. What's going on, everybody? Brian here, and with me is the magnificent Jordan Dill. Say hi.
Yo, peoples.
Yeah. Okay, so in case you didn't already know by the post, this is going to be about The Last Jedi, as just like everything else in the past few days has been about at this point.
There's spoilers though, right? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's spoilers. If you don't think there's going to be spoilers in this, then you're in trouble. Okay. And before we begin, I just want to kind of put this out there. There's a lot of shitty people on the internet, and we all know that. This is a friendly discussion about the movie. It's a movie when it comes down to it. At the end of the day, if you have comments while watching this, that's perfectly fine. Keep it civil. No, there's a strict no asshole policy on my channel. So, with that being said, where do you want to start?
Share that with me before we started this.
No, well, I mean, you can be, but they can't.
Oh, okay.
That's how this works. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So starting off, what do we think about it overall before we start getting into the nitty gritty?
Well, how many times have you seen it?
Once. I thought about seeing it again today, but I didn't.
I saw it twice. The Thursday night and then again Friday night. The Friday night showing was a mistake because it was another late showing, and I just hadn't given myself enough time.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
To let the first showing soak in. But my immediate feeling when I was done with that first showing was just disappointment.
Really? Okay.
I just, well, you know, I didn't want to say it out loud. You know, I was just like, I'm just going to keep all this to myself. And my friend was like, I don't know, dude. I thought it kind of sucked. And then we just kind of like, okay, we're going to do this. So we kind of went through it. But I'm coming around on some things. I am.
Okay.
And I'm working. I'm getting ready for to go see it again, probably sometime soon.
Okay.
Now that things have started to find their place in my brain and settle.
Sure. And I was the same way. That was the only reason I didn't do a review on the YouTube channel, because I just like when I watch. Let me just go ahead and put this out here. I liked it overall. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. But having said that, I did have fun with it, in spite of its flaws. I thought it was probably the best looking Star Wars movie, in terms of cinematography, because there's that one scene, and you know, once again spoilers, but there was a part where Kylo Ren's like in front of the Imperial Walkers or whatever they call them in this movie, and he put out his lightsaber and kind of just struck that pose, and it was just so like if you just freeze frame that.
Yeah, where he's facing down Luke.
Yeah.
His mannerisms are so damn cool. Where he just takes it, he stomps at the same time. He's like, wow.
And if I put,
I did love that.
If you freeze frame that, and then like you just like put it on your computer or whatever, took it to a printing shop, made a poster out of it, boom, that's wall art right there. That's how pretty a lot of these shots looked. So in that aspect, I really enjoyed it. I'm like, that's a really nice looking shot.
That would probably make like a pretty useful GIF if, you know, just like somebody just says some shit to start a fight on the internet and you're just like, wham. Like, you know what's coming.
Yep, here we go. Okay, so your immediate response was like, not really, and then mine was like, okay, fine, cool. So I know you kind of broke it down with what you want to talk about, so that way we're not kind of all over the place with this, and we'll kind of add things after your list if there needs to be anything added. So where do you want to go first?
Well, I threw my list together in no particular order.
Okay.
But I guess the two biggest things for me are the first two things I put on the list. So the first thing is Snoke.
Okay.
Because, Abrams kind of created this mystery around the character in Force Awakens.
Right.
And so right away it was like, who is this guy? Have we seen him before?
Right.
Is he somebody from the lore?
Right.
Or is he a brand new person? Where did he come from? Like, yeah, people have always had those questions about Sith, you know, and bad guys. And, you know, in this era, I guess in this modern era of movies and TV shows where the lines being blurred and people they really get into bad guys.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Is that because there's not enough good bad guys out there?
Well, I think most of the best bad guys are protagonists these days. You know, people in Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and
Right.
Breaking Bad. You know, all those shows have essentially bad guy main characters that you like, even though they're morally gray and sometimes dark.
Sure.
But it's just that I kind of wanted to. I was really interested in getting to know this guy, and his personality really wasn't quite what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to have him go out so fast, and just
Yeah.
we spent 2 years, go on YouTube. There's tens of thousands of hours of people speculating on who the fuck this dude was, and
he's Darth Plagueis.
Irrelevant.
Yeah. And I get the frustration from that aspect, but there should have been more of a backstory. I do agree with that, but in the grand scheme of things, when I think about it, and once again, just my opinion, when you look at the original trilogy and you think of the Emperor and Vader, he's the pinnacle bad guy in Star Wars at this point. He probably will be for a long time. But having said that, he was never the head guy. And the Emperor was. But in this movie, they just said, hey, you know what? He's going to surpass his grandfather. And he's going to be the head guy in this last movie. Now, that could be a good or bad thing. I don't know.
Well, Lucas had this idea with Star Wars, and they're going with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But where Lucas said that he wanted the movies, the separate trilogies, to rhyme cinematically.
Okay.
He wanted them to, follow a similar cadence and just kind of feel the same without being the exact same thing, but being similar enough. So that's why you have like the battle at the end of the movie on
Mm-hmm.
the salt planet.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a redo of Hoth.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scene with Rey and Kylo and Snoke was almost kind of like a redo of Into the Return of Jedi with Palpatine and Luke and Darth Vader. So they're kind of redoing things, but in a different way, but kind of following the same flow.
Sure.
And they've done scene by scene comparisons of prequel movies to the original movie, like A New Hope, and you see them open with the same type shot of a ship coming in, and then a shot of a planet, and then somebody riding on a speeder. It's like almost scene for scene similar. And so while at the same time they're pretending like the prequels didn't happen, they're not referencing anything from them at all, but they're trying to rhyme. So it's not really a direct ripoff, and they're following an established thing by Lucas. But
Luke did mention Sidious though.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that.
But I guess what it is, we kind of got spoiled. Everybody complains about the prequels for their quality and this and that, but it was all backstory, just tons and tons and tons of backstory for all these characters that we've been wondering about what their deal was for 20 years.
Yeah.
So now we have all this tons of backstory on Palpatine, and we're kind of spoiled by it. When if you forget those exist and you just go by the original trilogy, we didn't know jack shit about them.
No, you're right.
We didn't know that his name was Sidious. We didn't know anything about how he came to power. All we knew is that he was a bad dude in a cloak that controlled Vader and could make lightning. That's literally all we knew.
Now,
so if you judge Snoke by that standard, then I guess I have less to complain about. And I guess they're just going to let authors fill in the gaps for this.
Oh, that's going to be a comic book by Marvel Comics, to filling in that backstory of who Snoke is. And just to clarify, when we're talking about the lore, we're talking about the movie lore more than anything. We're not talking about any books that came out way back in the day or anything like that.
All the books that I've read are no longer in the canon.
Right. Okay.
And they're recycling stuff and re-adding it into the canon here and there, but I haven't read any of the new universe books or comics or anything.
Yeah. In terms of the Snoke theory that he was Darth Plagueis, I don't really like.
I really liked that one.
I liked it, but in Ryan Johnson came out, I think it was either today or yesterday, and he basically said, like, look, if I made him Darth Plagueis and he announced to Rey that he was Darth Plagueis, she would have been like, okay, if you say so. It wouldn't have this emotional impact to her or anybody else except for people in the audience, and he didn't think that served the story well enough to do that. which I guess I get from that standpoint.
Well,
But
I'm glad he's coming out and kind of clarifying some things for people.
sure,
And I think a lot of the problem with it is just like an initial just gut reaction, because everybody was sitting here with their expectations way up here, just going, "I can't wait to find out who Snoke is!
yeah,
Yay!" And then
it
you're
didn't
just like,
happen. He's like, and he's dead.
"What?" It kind of took me out of the movie at that point. And then well, he dropped two bombs on us in the same scene, right?
Mhm.
Because the other giant question from Force Awakens is, who the hell is
Rey's
Rey and who were her
parents.
parents?
Yeah. Is that something that you were expecting it to be very climatic?
Um, I don't know. I felt like J.J. Abrams with in the Force Awakens with the lightsaber flashback and everything like that. That and then all her, like, the way her story rhymes with
Right.
Luke's story, and they have kind of a similar trajectory. I just kind of felt like naturally it was building to a similar event,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and just like to metagame and talk about actual filmmaking and separate yourself from just the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they had said that there were some big things in the script that Ryan Johnson changed,
Mm.
where the initial script for the movie that was written tackled those questions, or had a story, had ideas, and he was kind of just like, no, I don't really want to deal with that, and just changed it.
Do you think there's a major disconnect between these movies being made in Disney? Like they're just like, okay, here's this. Do you even think until J.J. Abrams gives them a script, they actually know what the ending is at this point?
Well, here's what J.J. Abrams said. He said, "The Force Awakens was mine. There
Mm-hmm.
is no overarching story arc
Mm-hmm.
between this trilogy. There's no guidelines or outline or anything that any director that comes in has to stay within or follow, except for the official canon set by the new Star Wars story team,
Mm-hmm.
that Disney has, that's making sure everything fits together with each other."
Okay.
So basically, he said, "I made Force Awakens, and then I bounce that ball over to Ryan Johnson's court. He grabs the ball, and whatever decisions he makes and wherever he decides to take the story is completely 100% on him. He's not beholden to anything I set up for him." And, so he made the choices that he made.
Do you think that the whole Ray's parents being, just, well, pieces of shit, really, um, do you think that could just be kind of smoke and mirrors on to where they'll do something with that, more with that on 9?
I think that it's the truth that Ryan Johnson prefers, but he left the explanation just small and vague enough
Mm-hmm.
that Abrams can easily, because Abrams is directing episode 9 for anybody that didn't
Right.
know that, he can easily take what was said in that scene and just, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
just flip it.
Right.
Kylo was just BSing in the
Yeah.
moment,
Because he's a
right?
piece of crap. I
Because
mean,
they're on the elevator on their way up beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Ray, I saw who your parents are," and kind of built it up in this thing. And I think the way I could see Abrams explaining it away is, in that moment he sees and he knows, and he wants to tell her.
Right.
And in the throne room, Snoke's got him down. He's explaining how he manipulated the two of them. He was, I,
Linked your
um,
minds, yeah.
I linked your mind, but also, like, I played off of all of Kylo's insecurities, and I think I think he's smarter than we're led to believe and giving
Mm-hmm.
him credit for. I
Mm-hmm.
think he immediately picked those up because, wow, he did that, and he just, as soon as things were, he had killed Snoke, he immediately started doing the same thing to Rey.
Yeah.
I think if Rey's parents were, if she really is related to, like, has some Jedi lineage or some really important um, ancestry that she doesn't know about, that it doesn't serve him to tell her about those in a moment where he's trying to effectively get her to join the dark side. You
Yeah.
don't go, your grandfather was Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now come to the dark
So
side.
yeah,
She's gonna be
exactly.
like, no, fuck
Sure.
that. You know, so, like, it could easily Abrams could easily just come back and say, yeah, Kylo saw for real, but in the moment it just didn't make sense to tell her when it would work counter to what he was trying to get her to do.
Yeah.
So they could easily go back on that and flip it around. But I do think Ryan Johnson wanted that to be once that was his idea for, just to get away from these questions.
Is it that, or is it just like Ryan Johnson is number one, setting up something else for the future of Star Wars in the sense of, and we'll probably get to this to this later, but it's like by him saying like, oh, your parents are no one, basically says like, look, you can be a Jedi, you don't have to be a Skywalker or this or that to have this bloodline. It can happen for anybody. Hence, and then part of the end of the movie too is that. Do you think that is kind of more set up territory for the new trilogy that they gave Ryan Johnson to create?
I think it very well could be him trying to set a new standard for who can be a Jedi. So then when because he signed on to do his own standalone trilogy after this wraps up,
Yep.
that, he's not beholden to heredity. His characters don't have to be related to anybody special. They don't have to come from anywhere special,
Mm-hmm.
And it could be maybe a social commentary thing that the Force chooses who to have a strong connection with based on their perceived privilege. You know what I mean? Like if
Right.
they're a lower class person, who's been held down or been persecuted or some way, or that you right that injustice by bestowing the power of the Force upon them, maybe something like that.
So overall, with Rey's lineage and what was revealed, quote unquote, in this movie, is it like okay, fine, or is this just like injustice and we need more in the grand scheme of things?
I was initially just really I like I said, all the books, the canon, the cartoon shows, the prequels, we've
Right.
kind of gotten spoiled off just getting tons of backstory. And the movie was supposed to answer like the answers to these questions were reserved for the person making this movie, and the person who made the movie
Just
decided
like,
not to
nah,
fucking answer
we're
them.
good.
And it was a little frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, also too, I mean, it's frustrating when I was asking about the disconnect between the directors or the producers and this new trilogy. It's like even with the Snoke thing with Snoke and Rey, for me looking at it, it's you built these two things up in this movie to be these grand questions, and then the next movie was just like a balloon just deflating. And I understand the frustration from that aspect, but from a story point of view, I didn't really care
I
too
think
much.
part of it is force that can be manifests itself in different ways depending on the personality and the intentions of the person using it.
Sure.
And they've been really pushing this in the cartoon series. As far they even called it the Gray Force and referred to it as the Gray.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the whole point. Is like they want to finish. Luke's the last Jedi. The
Right.
Jedi Order's done. Snoke is dead. He never claimed to be a Sith, but like Ray said in his, Kylo said in his little speech after Snoke was dead, he was like, "No more Jedi, no more Sith, no more rebellion, no more First Order. Just cast off all the new, all old, and just start something new together." And they have a way in Star Wars, at least in these last two movies, of having the characters say something in the movie that they want you to know
No,
that
for
this is
future.
how they feel about Star Wars.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that speech is like, we want to move Star Wars past all of this stuff that kind of puts it in a box as far as storytelling is concerned.
Hmm.
There's things you want to do with it. You can't because you're forced to stay into this, but there's the Jedi and the Sith, and we can only operate within this space.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Where do we want to go now?
You could roll right into to Luke's whole thing and his eventual end.
Um, Number one, this is the best Luke Hamill's ever been as Luke Skywalker. I mean, from an acting perspective, at the very least. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Now, and this is kind of a thing that I've noticed with these new movies, is that the three main characters that we grown up with and that we love just really turned out to have shitty fucking lives after the fact. And I think that's what bothers me more about this than anything. It's like, is anybody happy? Did anything just,
Yeah, you go back to the end of Return of the Jedi, and everybody's
Yeah.
like happy and celebrating on Endor, and they're like, those fuckers don't even know how shitty it's about to be.
Like, listen, you don't get it. But not only that too. I mean, I understand from a plot, from the plot that things went south, and he was just like, you know what, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore.
I was like, remember that medal you got after you blew up the first Death Star? What a big fucking deal that was.
Yeah, you want to melt it down and turn it into a bullet. That's where it seemed like he was going. No, but the very first the scene where she hands off his dad's lightsaber.
Oh, tell me about it.
Like
that scene really did pop me, right? Because
I was like,
in the chair, he's just looking at it and then just boom,
Whoop.
tosses it over his shoulder. I was the only person in the theater, but I lost it. I was like,
I think in the theater though, like for me, there was like a lot of nervous laughter. You're just like, I don't that's funny, but like they're afraid. People were just afraid to laugh. Like, should I be laughing at this or not? I don't get it. But when I think about it more, and not that it really it doesn't ruin the whole movie for me, but it's just like, that was your dad's lightsaber. You lost it because he cut off your hand. Someone else found it, and they're giving it to you after 30 years or however long it's been, and you're just like, nah, we're good.
well, he was supposed to be doing his best Yoda impression without the word reversing.
Gotcha.
In this new movie, basically, right? So, it was a misdirect because everybody was expecting you to look at this thing and just go, "Oh my god, this thing has so much history," and
whoop. And then it was like, I don't care.
Which is pretty much an analogy for the whole movie.
It's like, oh, that stuff that you liked? Well, guess what?
that thing you just built up so much, just Snoke, throw it over my fucking shoulder.
Yeah.
His parents go off the cliff.
No, I think overall, as far as he's concerned, I thought he did great. And this this might lead into something else later, but I was just kind of with the whole force projection thing, and it's kind of like it kind of goes into what you were saying a little bit, how we're over these years we've been spoiled by this kind of set of rules in the universe, and when it kind of goes the other way, either you're fine with it, you're kind of whatever about it, or you're just fucking pissed off about it, and that and it's like when he did that, I was like, huh, I guess this is a thing now. And I just kind of left it at that. I wasn't really mad about it.
You're going to sit here and ask your questions like, if that was possible, then why didn't Jedi that were way more powerful than Luke do that shit all the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that there's an answer to that question that can be the same answer works for all of those questions. And it's something that I think it was Abrams' mantra that he passed along to Rian Johnson, and it was something that he actually had Han Solo vocalize in Force Awakens.
That's not how the Force works.
No, they're sitting in the hangar of Han's big freighter, right? And they're worried that if they try to leave, they're going to get caught in a tractor beam. He was like, well, if I just go straight into hyperspeed from sitting stationary, then they won't have time to catch me with the beam. And Ray's like, is that even possible? And he's like, I don't ever ask that question until after I've done
it. It's a good point.
That's it. That's all you need to know. It's like, I don't care about reconciling, this thing that I thought would be neat to do with the whole rest of the Star Wars universe and everything else that's ever been done. I thought it would be cool to do, and I did it. And that's all you need to know.
Yep. Fair enough.
I'm going to take that for granted now.
So I guess we're to imagine at this point that he exhausted himself so bad that he just like straight up just became one with the Force, or just straight up died, whatever.
They did throw out like a nugget of foreshadowing
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, because the very first time that Kylo and Rey have
Right.
their mind links,
Yep.
and she's on the island and he's in like a hallway on the ship, and he's like, "Are you really here?"
Mm-hmm.
He's like, or no, he said it was like, "Are you projecting?" or something like that. He says the word, and he's like, "No, you couldn't be doing that. The effort would kill you." Like he
Yeah.
says that, which I don't think is, I don't know, maybe the best use of foreshadowing, because then you would know that he was projecting before he did it, and then, but you wouldn't be thinking he was going to die, because obviously Luke's more powerful than Rey. He's powerful enough to do it without dying, would be the assumption based on what he said to her, and then he would die, and then be like, oh, but you didn't even know he was doing it, and
Right.
then he dies. I don't know, it's a little different,
When
but
apparently when you go back, number one, he had his blue lightsaber, which got destroyed earlier in the movie. But number
yeah, it
two,
was kind of like that whole what was the deal with the Matrix, where you plug
a
into the
hiccup.
Matrix and you have you
You know,
have your perception of what you will
look
look
like,
like. So
yeah,
in real life, Neo was bald, and he goes
yeah,
into the Matrix. He's got like perfect hair and
yep.
sunglasses and cool coat. It was like, this is what Luke thinks he looks
Looks
like,
like in the Matrix.
in his mind.
Yeah. Um, also, too, I guess when on the planet Crate, when they step, they leave the red mark or the imprint because of the ground being so salty. But when he's stepping
That
on there,
the planet in that movie is an analogy for the fan base.
but when he was stepping, like there was no red marks behind his feet.
Ah, dude, I didn't even think about that.
So I guess that was another one of those Sixth Sense situations. You're like, oh, okay, now I now I
Because
get
they
it.
purposely point out to you when the general steps out of the trench to the viewpoint that his footsteps are red.
Yep.
I didn't even think to look at his feet when he was walking out there. That's a neat little callback. Then
Yeah.
that'll be something to look for the next time I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure I would have caught it even then.
And since we're talking about Luke's story, probably maybe one of the best moments, if not the best moment, depending on who you're talking to, Master Yoda showing up.
I don't know. It didn't. I didn't nerd out about it.
I did. I was like, oh my god, they did it.
For
And it was
some
Puppet
reason,
Yoda. It was Puppet Yoda too. That was even better.
I disagreed with the usage of the puppet, and here's why. Okay, and just follow me on this.
Okay.
Okay, in the original trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
Yoda was essentially a kind of a small part of it, right?
Right.
He was in maybe a third of Empire Strikes Back, and then a small scene in Return of the Jedi when Luke goes back and he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back to the prequels, and he's a huge part of the entire trilogy. He has lightsaber fights, and I don't know, when I close my eyes and I picture Yoda, I see prequel Yoda. I don't see puppet Yoda. And maybe that's just because there's an age gap between us that's enough to where I was a smaller kid when the prequels came out, and so maybe
I think it is an age gap thing because when the prequels came out and Yoda, I mean, for Yoda to do what he did, he had to be CGI'd.
yeah.
There's no doubt about it. But for me, growing up with Empire and Jedi and the original Star Wars, him as a puppet is what I remember more. So it probably just is an age thing more than
But
anything.
I don't know. I felt like in the whole grand scheme of things, the prequel version of Yoda with the CG was the more prominent, more used,
Sure.
version. That I just, when I saw the puppet, I was like, yeah, that's a toy. That's not Yoda. I know
Sure.
maybe it's wrong. Don't freak out. It was just an instinctual thing in my brain that I
I
was
just
just
want
like,
I can't, I'm not on the Facebook page right now. I'm just wondering if there's comments right now. I feel like you piece of trash.
Fuck that guy.
Do you have anything else to add about Luke Skywalker? Do you think he should have? Do
Um,
you think he should have stuck around for the next one at the very least? And maybe he will as
I
a
don't know.
Force ghost, but
I think he creates a problem where he's obviously more powerful than Kylo.
mm-hmm.
And if it was Luke and Rey,
It'd
and
be
then
destroyed.
Kylo on the other side, it would just be kind of. Plus, another thing they threw out in the whole conversation is something that Snoke said, is that he knew that when Kylo, fell to the dark side and everything, that the Force would um, basically produce his equal on the light side.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
he said that he's like, I knew the Force would produce his counterpart or something like that, talking about he knew that there was somebody coming who could equal him in the Force. And then that turned out to be Rey. So I think, like, with Snoke dying and then Luke still being there, then the Force would
He would have
have
been. They would
this
have destroyed him.
involuntary compulsion to produce somebody else who's equal in the dark side,
Yeah.
to Luke, and then we just repeat this whole, like,
And
Sith cycle over again.
and that the consensus on why there needs to be the gray area?
Um, I'm. Uh, is Kylo inherently bad or evil?
We don't know that.
That's a question. Right?
At this point, it just seems like no. He's just like it's over. But I
Technically,
mean,
he fell. He technically he didn't fall to the dark side.
right?
He had leanings,
Seduced,
he had insecurities, and he had fears.
hmm
That
like
maybe
Vader.
he never felt like he was going to live up to his family's legacy. He
Sure.
was real insecure about that, and those things were eating him up. And maybe Snoke was, communicating him somehow, prodding him when he was training under Luke. But it was Luke's intervention that pushed him over the edge, right?
Hmm.
When he had that momentary freak out where he thought he was going to chop him down while he was sleeping,
Yeah.
and that's what set Kylo off. His family, not only is they don't see him as ever going to be as good as Luke or Darth Vader, but now this member of his family is actually trying to kill him. So I think that's like the catalyst that sends him off.
Sure.
He kills Snoke to protect Rey. He So, like, and he doesn't want to take over the First Order so he can just dominate the galaxy and be all powerful. He actually, expresses an intent to fix things, to stop this whole cycle of war and rebellion and killing, where, like, for once we just need a period of peace where somebody's in control that's just not.
Well, sure, but then
On
why?
the other hand,
But then why go after them on the planet below? If he's head honcho now, he could be like, you know what? Let's pull back. Let them go, and we'll figure this out later.
I mean, while he has, I think he definitely has this war of conscience going on inside him. He's also a spoiled fucking brat. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude throws tantrums, and that was, there's the tantrum where you just whip out your lightsaber and beat up a computer, and then there's the tantrum where you try to blow up Luke Skywalker with 15.
You think you got him?
So I think that was just a mega tantrum. That was him on the floor in Walmart, just kicking his feet and knocking over.
Speaking of which, when they were all firing at Luke Skywalker, I really want Luke Skywalker to like freeze all of those beams and like retract him and just blow the hell out of those machines. That would have been awesome.
I feel Luke, the whole thing would have worked better and felt better if he was not projecting himself, if he was physically there, if he legitimately deflected all of that. And then, they feinted it for a second when Kylo, he dropped, he turned off his lightsaber and Kylo was coming at him. Maybe it would have been better if he just let Kylo, just went out the Obi-Wan way.
Yeah.
But then maybe we would have felt better because we knew he really was the badass and he was making a choice.
Right.
It's kind of like, because he felt bad about causing Kylo's fall, that he was going to repent by, allowing him to strike him down or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe made more sense.
But then they would have been accused of, just taking that from, the original Star Wars with Obi-Wan, and then we would just have this a whole other debate.
Rhyming.
Well, call it what you want.
Not rip-off, it's rhyming.
I mean, I wouldn't have minded that, but you know what people would say. It's the same. It's like with The Force Awakens. It got pinged because it was the same story beats as A New Hope. And then part of me feels with this movie, they do something different, and it's getting pinged for being like, what the hell? I don't know. I just don't think there's a happy medium anymore with Star Wars. I feel terrible for any director who takes that on, because it's never. I don't know if it's ever going to be perfect for anybody anymore at this point. So
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm starting to come around on a few things. Maybe it's not such a big deal that that Snoke went out the way he did, and that I don't know more about him.
hmm
Maybe that was our fault as a Star Wars fan base of just putting too much on that one thing.
sure,
You know, just we just assumed that it was this more important thing
than
than
what
it
it was.
needed to be,
Right.
and we just need some time to mourn all that effort that we put into thinking about who the dude was,
Right.
and then once we move past it, we won't judge it as harshly.
Sure. No, you're right.
And the Ray thing I haven't completely given up on because, like I said, I think
Episode 9.
Abrams might pick that back up and turn
I,
it
I
back
think it's just.
around.
I think it's too important. I mean, Snoke being one thing, but Rey's lineage, whether it exists or not, I think J.J. Abrams being part of the brainchild behind that character, I think it's too important for him just to be like, not have some sort of resolution with her. So I don't know. Maybe.
I know one thing I think is a really big coincidence is that Ray and the Millennium Falcon both end up stranded on the same backwater desert planet.
Yep.
You know, the same, the same guy that bought the Millennium Falcon off of a guy that bought it off of a guy off of a guy that bought it off a guy off of a guy that stole it
Right.
is the same guy who Ray's parents just happened to randomly sell her to for beer money.
Right.
You know, I think that's just too big a coincidence. Maybe it's the Force pushing the two things together, setting things up the way it does. Maybe it's just a huge coincidence. Maybe if that whole space showdown had happened over a completely different planet, then some other random Force user would have hooked up with Finn and BB-8 and
Sure.
went on adventures, and Rey would still be eating her half-quarter portions in a hollowed out AT-AT on Jakku. I mean,
Well, since you brought that up, that brings another question. Is Rey at this point pretty inconsequential to this story so far? You're getting choppy, man. You're getting choppy.
she really had
Okay.
no more effect on the movie than could have had, or Finn could have had, or anybody else in it. She apparently went to this island with Luke.
Jordan, hold on for a second. You're chopping up pretty bad.
Am I?
Yeah. So let everything catch up with itself. Okay, I think you're good now. Okay.
Yeah, let me rerun some. I mean, right? The movie starts off. She's on the island with Luke. She's there so he can train her.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the length of the timeline, she may, and this is generous, the most amount of time she could have spent from approaching him on the mountainside and handing him the lightsaber to leaving to go find Kylo, maybe 8 or 9 days max. And that's the generous one. It could have been as short as like 48 hours.
I love
days.
how in the prequels it took years to become a Jedi, but like in the original trilogy and this new trilogy, it's like, hey, you know what? Spend a day with me. We'll get you going.
Yeah, it was like, he's like, I'm going to give you 3 lessons. Lesson 1, close your eyes and think about your feelings. Okay, now you can, you're super powerful in the Force.
Yep.
I don't even remember what lesson number 2 was, and lesson number 3 never happened. She
Yeah.
left before she got that one.
Maybe maybe that will be in the 9th one where he comes back as a Force ghost.
Yeah, he taught her how to reach out with her feelings and sense the Force, and it's just like it was as easy as like just telling her what to do, and then all of a sudden she can access all of the Force, interpret it, understand it, know what this means and what it means, and sees it and how everything's just like automatically.
Yeah.
Like
the Matrix.
And I guess I kind of have a little theory bubbling up that may end up coming to fruition. JJ may decide to run it down, but she said she had visions of that tree. That she had been in that room, she had seen the books before and stuff like that. I think it's possible that as a young child she was being trained.
Sure.
And maybe somebody found out about her, was worried she was going to be found, and decided to hide her on that planet, and and
And that her name's
her
not really
memories
Ray.
were suppressed or something like that. Maybe it'll come out, but it just seems like she just picked everything up way too fast to have not her only knowledge of the ability to do a Jedi mind trick was the fact that just old stories of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
I think
Moving
I heard
rocks.
Luke did this thing one time. Let me see if it works. She
Yeah.
didn't even know how to reach out and lift a rock or fill with but she could force trick a stormtrooper into letting her out of her chains.
Yeah.
I just maybe there's some programming there subconsciously that she's accessing. She just doesn't know it's there. That could be a thing.
All right.
Nerd theory first. Just putting that out.
Yeah, there you go. It's out there. Hot take, everybody.
Everybody's gonna come back to this video in 2 years and goes, that video with 35 views, that guy was right.
Hey, fuck you. Hopefully YouTube will be more than 35 views when it goes up. Okay, so Ray. Sure. Yep.
I said a lot of stuff there. I don't even remember what all I said.
Yeah. We'll have to rewind later.
My brain tends to just sometimes.
Okay. Where do you want to go next?
Don't forget about the sexy sea cow that Luke was milking. That was
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Oh.
I'm definitely gonna have a shameful fantasy.
You know what the worst part about that scene was? Like the alien would looked at Ray like, "You want some of this too, don't you?" Eh?
Just staring around the face.
Yeah.
One of the favorite things I saw on Twitter was somebody was like, "Hey, did you see Lena Dunham's cameo in Star Wars?"
Oh my God. That's terrible.
Okay.
Oh my God. Oh, there's probably some Lena Dunham fan right now watching this. We're like, that piece of shit. Oh man. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Getting off topic.
Yeah. Okay. Super Leia. That's what I chose to put
Oh, yeah. Once again, one of those moments where just like, okay, I guess the Force, you can do that. All right.
Yeah, somebody who's never used the Force beyond sometimes using it as a walkie-talkie with her family members.
Yeah, a walkie-talkie. Yeah.
Can just randomly summon it enough to prevent herself from dying in the openness of space. I just thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Oh shit. Sorry. Something happened.
And that's the other big question, right? It's like Carrie Fisher's dead. Could they not have found a way to kill her? They didn't want to kill her and Luke in the same movie.
Well, when she got sucked out of there, I was like, "Yep, that's how they do it." And,
yeah.
But
and you know
it
what?
wasn't that
Everybody
at all.
in the theater would have accepted it.
Yeah.
They would have gone like, "Okay, we were waiting. We were expecting them to do it. That works, and now it's over with, and we can move on with Laura Dern."
Yeah.
And
No,
it's
it's
magic.
I think as far as Carrie Fisher still being in this movie, I mean, she did well. She had way more to do than the last movie, which I guess it was like the last movie was Han Solo's movie, this was Luke's movie, and the next one was supposed to be her movie, but she's dead, unfortunately, and now it's not going to come to that. So
I don't remember seeing was her part completely done when she died, or did they have to do some reshoots?
No, I think it was completely done.
It just felt to me like maybe the movie, it almost felt like while the pacing was so weird that like maybe she died.
Yeah.
And Luke lived in the original cut of the film. And then they went back into that scene where she died by getting sucked out into space, and then just created a CG version of her to float back down into the ship. And then all the scenes that took place after that were going to take place before that,
right,
in the old cut of the film. So they had to just take things and rearrange it to make it work. I
don't think anything changed though. I really don't.
Maybe not. Maybe that was the movie he intended to make from the start.
Yeah.
And I think at very least, if people knew part of the weirdness of how it worked out was because of her death, he could blame it on that. Then people go, okay, I'm going to judge it less harshly.
Right.
But I guess maybe that wasn't the case. I I think when episode 9 comes out, I think they're going to do a time jump. I don't know if
Okay.
it's 10 years, 5 years,
Well, that was
but
actually
I'm
something I was going to
expecting
bring up. Yeah.
yeah, I'm expecting a time jump where they're just gonna just say Leia died. You know,
Yeah.
there's going to be a
And
memorial
that's
to
just
her
that she
somewhere,
passed
and they're
away
going to
of
have
old
a
age.
conversation. Yeah, there'll be a memorial somewhere. They'll have a conversation in front of it, and then that'll be that. She'll be gone.
Right. Yeah, I mean that would make the most sense because they already said they're not going to CGI her like they did in Rogue One or anything like that. So I mean that would be the only thing that made sense that makes sense out of that.
I mean, Tarkin looked good in Rogue One for the limited amount of time he was
Right.
on screen. If you had to watch a 2.5 hour long movie with somebody that looked that
Right.
that would have been kind of off putting and weird after too long.
No, you're right. Okay, so you had some other notes that we could probably breeze through rather quickly, honestly. From what I remember. So what else you got?
I guess Finn and Rose, we can just go ahead and combine them since they were together.
Fuck that storyline. Oh my god, talk about. Let's just call this what it is. You could have shaved off a whole lot more of that movie if you just simply made Rose the cracker, the code cracker, not the cracker. That sounded racist.
Fortune cookie.
And put them on and had them sneak on to that ship, have their little wild adventures trying to get through the ship, give Captain Phasmor a little more screen time, and just done it from there. The whole part, like, not that I didn't like that planet they were on. I thought it was very beautifully made. But having said that, it just seems like a storyline. Okay, so Luke and Rey are doing their thing. Kylo's doing his thing. And then they have Poe and the crew doing their thing. Which, by the way, if you really want to get to the grand scheme of things, this whole movie was like a very slow chase scene. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I don't understand. It was just like they created this whole thing just to give John Boyega something to do. And that's the way it really, I mean, and that may be extremely wrong, but just looking at this, I'm like, but
that Finn Rose storyline had absolutely zero impact on the entire movie. Changed zero of the outcomes.
Yep.
Right? They went off to this casino planet and had this whole adventure, and they pushed, they showed off some I guess some social income inequality aspects of that planet with the poor kids getting whipped and
right, social commentary, sure.
Yeah, there's some social commentary there. And they come back with this guy, they get on the ship, and their plan immediately falls apart and they get captured.
Yeah.
And then he gets his money and he leaves. Boom, gone. He doesn't get his comeuppance. There's nothing happens there. And then like Poe, right? Poe is so sure that their plan is going to work that he basically commits mutiny on the ship, takes over the whole ship, and trying to buy them time.
Yep.
They get on. They just knock his ass out and lock him up, and he had nothing to do with anything. Yeah, he was pointless. Finn and Rose was pointless. Even at the end on the final planet, Finn's going to sacrifice himself to destroy that cannon, and then she stops him. Yep. And apparently they were building some kind of romantic angle between them that absolutely nobody watching the movie got from any of their interactions in the movie before that.
Right.
And then she gives him that really awkward kiss that just made no sense that he didn't even seem into.
What if, like in my mind, like after they cut from that scene where he was looking at her like all confused, he was going to be like, "Oh fuck yeah, let's do this," and he just like,
there's like AT-ATs ever blowing everything up, and there's just a shot from behind the speeder said, "Ricket."
Oh,
so this is happening.
Yeah. Oh god, I am messed up. All right.
But overall, Rose, her whole character was just bad. I hated that whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't. it just seemed like they could have given her so much more to do and made it, and it said the same thing in less time. That's all. So yeah. So moving on. What else do we want to go in there? Talk about.
I mentioned Poe didn't do anything. I've already talked about the Gray Force. Um, I guess the main like redeeming thing of the whole entire movie was that sick ass fight with Kylo and Rey
Yeah, it
versus
was
Snoke's
awesome.
guards. I mean, even the stuff with Kylo and Luke at the end was neat until it got undercut by the whole idea that he was just
wasn't really
a
there.
hologram.
Yeah.
That kind of felt like that kind of deflated it a little bit. But yeah, that Kylo Rey fight scene and just the whole thing, that whole scene was probably the one redeeming thing of the whole movie for me. I mean, Rey and Luke stuff, on say what you will about it being limited and everything, it was still good interactions and good scenes. But Rey and Kylo's whole mind link, all their scenes where they were talking together, just their whole thing, the two of them, was the best thing in the whole movie.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really don't know how else to really get into that. I mean, for me, there was a few things. I mean, once again, I'm a big cinematography guy, so the whole thing at the end with Kylo's fight and Luke Skywalker, I thought was visually impressive. Yoda coming back as a fan of the, growing up on the original ones, that was a big thing for me. I was disappointed that they didn't bring like Ewan McGregor back as Ben Kenobi for a second, but whatever. There's no reason to do that, by the way. That's just me thinking out loud.
In 9, when we find out that he's Rey's grandfather, he can Force Ghost to her, and
in Episode 9, Qui-Gon just shows up. She's like, "Who are you?" He's like, "Oh, my bad.
I have a particular set
just skills."
Jedi skills.
Yep.
Do you think? What do you think there might be? There's some symbolism there when they were both struggling over the lightsaber, right? And I think it's a callback to Force Awakens when they were in the snow, and he was trying to pull it to him, and then when it finally moves, it zips past him to her hand. Right.
Yeah.
And then in this scene, they're both fighting this over the lightsaber the same way, using the Force, both pulling it two opposite directions, and it breaks.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's some symbolism there. They're trying to say something that nobody's really asking about, and that we're kind of missing. Do you have any feelings about that?
That it doesn't matter who has the lightsaber. I mean,
the lightsaber itself is a symbol of something.
It's a symbol of lineage, and it's a symbol of New Hope. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that lightsaber belonged to Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, which was his grandfather. So he had a particular claim to it. So you have this one side of it where it's lineage, is like, that belongs to me, as part of my family, and then you have this other side of it is like, you know what? Screw your lineage. This is old and new, and then there's the middle. And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter who has the fucking lightsaber.
I mean, I thought for just a second maybe it was symbolic of the discussion they had right before, right? Where, there's been this whole thing going on of like, who is Rey? Who are her parents? Could she be a Skywalker? Is she Luke's daughter? Are they related? Are they cousins? Are they brother and sister somehow? And I think maybe the lightsaber that belonged to this hypothetically mutual relation of theirs, it breaking in half, was like the symbolic breaking of those theories.
Sure.
Where it's officially taking her and separating it from the Skywalker bloodline and lineage. She's not they don't have, there is no family relation. We're breaking that and separating them.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was.
I mean it could be that too. I mean, because we know that, like, at this point that 9's the last family saga, because let's face it, there's really hardly any family left at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, and maybe it's a far simpler explanation, maybe it was just a way of demonstrating that they are both equally powerful in the Force. Sure. Because neither one of them won out over the other one.
Right.
And
that's true.
Yep. Maybe it was just to illustrate that they were completely equal in their abilities.
Or it could just be like the director saying, like, you know what, this stupid lightsaber has given everybody so much grief. let's just pull this sucker apart and just be done with it.
He's like, do you have any idea how many young children this lightsaber murdered?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's just be done with it and get get a new lightsaber with a new hilt, whatever. Yeah. Um,
Well, I guess the other thing, nobody's really talking about it much, but the Knights of Ren.
where are
I
they
don't know
at?
anything about that. I guess all we really know about the Knights of Ren are that they were fellow pupils of Luke's that
Went with him.
Kylo turned and took with him.
Well, I
But where
have
the
to.
fuck are they? They've
I
probably
have to
been pretty
imagine.
useful.
I have to imagine that's his. That's his. Those are his generals in 9. You know what I mean? Like, since he's basically the emperor, or in that emperor status or Snoke status or whatever, he has to have like minions. Maybe that's Maybe that's who they are in this next movie.
I had somebody say to me that Episode 9 was just going to be a Star Wars version of Kill Bill, with Rey just killing her way through the Knights of Ren to get to Kylo. Maybe. Sounds pretty neat.
I'd watch it. Screw it. I'll watch Episode 9 one way or the other. But I mean, if that's exactly what it was, then I'd be like,
Episode
cool.
9 is nothing but 2.5 hours of just kick-ass lightsaber battles as Rey murders her way through the Knights of Ren, I'd be like, okay,
Whatever. At this point, who cares? Oh, a Star Wars revenge story. That'd be awesome. That's
what a concept.
that's one of the offshoot movies. So speaking of which, where do we think 9's going to go? I mean, we talked about the time jump already. There's no Leia anymore because, well, Carrie Fisher died. Luke is at best going to be a Force ghost. Han Solo is gone. You have Chewie. You have a Porg. Which,
oh god, we didn't talk about this.
No, we didn't talk about the Porgs. I didn't care. It was fine. They weren't in there enough to bother me like Jar Jar Binks was or anything like that.
Did you hear the backstory of the Porgs while they were in the movie at all? Where the concept of them came from?
Mm-mm.
The island that they were shooting on with Luke and Rey, there was this species of indigenous bird that just kept inserting itself. Yeah, it was just real, like, just keep getting into everything and being really annoying, and yeah, they kept flying into scenes and just screwing around, and so they were just decided to they became, I guess, like the unofficial mascots of that part of the shoot.
Yeah,
and then they decided to create a Star Wars bird to put in the movie as
Star
like
Wars
an
bird.
Yeah, that's what they are basically.
No, you're right. It's just funny
birds.
when you say it like that. Huh.
Previous to them, the only Star Wars bird I can think of is maybe a Minot.
Oh yeah, gross. We have someone here that actually commented, I still have a funny feeling that Rey is somehow related to Vader. I didn't buy that story of her parents abandoning her for shots of vodka.
Yeah, I didn't either. I agree with that.
Okay, awesome. See, someone commented.
Not that that's the like I said, Abrams could easily turn that whole thing around, but I think it was Rian Johnson's intention for that to be like the end of that question.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, I mean, J.J. Abrams could be like, "Hey, you know how you fucked up my storyline? I'm going to unfuck it right now.
I'm fixing that shit."
Yeah, I'm fixing that." Like stat. I don't think that. Because J.J. Abrams is a producer, he had to know what was going on, and he, being like, "Okay, sure, why not?" Someone, Keith Hudak. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. Last Jedi is Star Wars for the everyone gets a trophy generation.
Everybody gets fucking
like Oprah,
killed.
you get a lightsaber, you get a lightsaber. Is that how do you feel about that?
Well, you know what? Rey didn't have to do jack shit for her apparently immense amount of ability in the Force. Apparently,
Yeah,
she just, her shit just works. Maybe she's born with it.
maybe it's Maybelline.
Yeah. And, that whole, like I said, what I was talking about earlier, just her shit just comes too natural to her, and I feel like the only way I could explain it is that she had training when she was younger and doesn't remember it.
Oh, maybe. looking back so far, I mean, we're 2 movies in now with one more in like 2 years or whatever. Quick take. How would you have created a new trilogy? Like what steps? Like I don't need like specific scenes drawn out. Just like okay, this is what we're gonna do. I want this to be this, and this is the end. I know you have had to have thought about it in some respect.
I mean, honestly, I thought about things that I would do differently about the stories that have about Force Awakens and Last Jedi. I honestly haven't put into a whole lot of thought of what I would do if I just was making this trilogy from scratch.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I mean, there's things that I don't think have worked very well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Finn makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? His whole backstory is that he's a stormtrooper of the First Order who was abducted from his family when he was a small child and has spent his entire life in indoctrination
Mm-hmm.
and basically like a cult. You know,
Yeah.
the dude should be kind of fucked up personality wise and socially, right?
Right.
But then, like, you know, he picks off his helmet and he's basically like an Eddie Murphy type character. I mean,
we got he just took off his helmet. He started making did that laugh.
so like, you know, he just takes off. You know, he's got this fully fledged personality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know, he's kind of comic relief, but like, you know, if you could pick one background for a character, a comic relief character to come from, it would not have been a stormtrooper.
Yeah. Is that?
So, like,
do you think the whole him being a stormtrooper was kind of just like, yeah, you know what, these guys aren't clones, and it was a big fu to the prequel in a sense.
Well, they reference it, and
they do. You're right. They do reference it.
Because Kylo's like, you know, maybe we'd be better off using clones, and he's like, you know, Hux gets all pissed off because the stormtrooper program is his baby. It's how he made his name and reputation in the First Order.
Yep.
I mean, if you know any of the backstory, I've been hearing about it, watching some video. Hux's father started the program that these new stormtroopers come from, and then him and Phasma got together and conspired to kill his father so he could take over his the program and use it to ascend through the ranks of the First Order.
Speaking of General Hux, what a whipping boy this guy was in this movie.
I know, right? You know, somebody bought that dude a thesaurus for Christmas.
Yeah.
Right? That's all I can keep thinking.
Like,
is every time it was like, eviscerate that ship and obliterate that person and destroy that thing and emancipate and emasculate. And just like, he's just got an endless supply of words. He's like, you know, the opposite of Trump. Like, whatever fancy word he needs just immediately comes to him in the moment. He never has to think about it.
I know a lot of good words. I
just assume I said a good one.
It's just like the director said, okay, think of a Nazi and make him as loud as you possibly can, and go.
Yeah, I mean, it was a general theme that, like, and I don't want to get into, you know, like more claims of social commentary and stuff like that, but pretty much all of the male characters in the movie were incompetent babies.
Yeah, they are.
You know, Finn doesn't know where, you know, if he's scared, if he's freaked out, he just wants to know where Rey is. He's just impulsive and nothing's working out right. Poe is fucking shit up all over the place. Kylo is like just a tantrum throwing, you know, terrible 20s, you know. And even Luke is just, you know, screwing around on that island and, you know, kind of fouling up, you know, what little bit of training he's trying to give her. And so, like, there's just, I don't know. The only like dude who knew what he was doing in that movie and knew what was
Snoke.
That Kennedy, the guy who was the commander of the dreadnought.
Oh, he was awesome.
Yeah, he just
like, why don't you get that guy in there?
Clearing the deck guns, you know.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm a grizzled old commander that knows shit, and they're like, well, let's kill this fucker. We can't have him in here.
Going back, I really let's be honest for a second about Star Wars in
we've
general.
Been lying this whole time.
We weren't, but let's just break it down to, like, it's just down to the bare, down to the grit here.
The bare necessities.
Necessities, yeah.
We're Disney
I
now. We can assume that.
I really wanted Ray or whoever whatever the main character was to actually be related to a Kenobi in some sense. Not because I felt like, I wanted that connection with the original trilogy, but let's just face it right now, the Skywalkers in this universe were a real fucking pain in the ass. What it really comes down to. The only good Skywalker that didn't have some bad shit going on with him was Luke Skywalker, and now he's gone. What I really wanted was for them to flip it and just say, this isn't necessarily a Skywalker story. Maybe this is a Kenobi story, and he was the one that actually brought the balance this whole time.
Well, here's the thing. A theory that is part of the whole. Rey is the granddaughter of Kenobi. One of the aspects of it that still has potential. If you go back to I don't know if it's Clone Wars or the Rebel series, because I don't know if Obi-Wan is in the Rebels cartoon series.
I thought he showed up. Maybe
But it's
I can't remember.
basically there is a woman that he has a relationship with in one of these shows. That woman just so happens to be the mother of Poe Dameron.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And this is new canon, not old canon.
Right.
So it could be a situation where Rey is the actual, I don't know, she's the niece of Poe Dameron. She's related to Poe and Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan's not necessarily related to Obi-Wan, or maybe he is. Maybe, so maybe there's something there. Maybe because they did have that moment at the end of Last Jedi where they introduced they were introduced
Right.
to each other for the
first time. Mm-hmm.
They're on the Falcon, and so maybe that's just kind of this is going to be a thing next movie.
Yeah. Sure.
And the way I started off, with the whole Star Wars movies rhyme with each other.
Yeah.
Then it would reflect the whole Luke and Leia finding out they were brother and sister. Rey and Poe find out they're brother and sister. So maybe that's a thing.
Maybe.
And maybe it would explain why Poe is such a good pilot and his instincts and his intuition is so strong when he's in the cockpit, because he's tapping into the Force. He just doesn't know it.
He doesn't know it.
He's got those reflexes and he can predict things and he knows things slightly before they happen,
No, I mean, that's a yeah. I mean, yeah, I can see how that could make sense if they decide to go that route. I have a feeling that Disney is going to be looking at these comments, and essentially it's going to be, they're going to look at them like, okay, we need to throw in a bone, and that's when they're going to break down and be like, okay, Rey's parents are actually these people who might be related to such and such, or whatever the case may be. This movie is going to be debated for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like a long time.
I see a scenario where they're hinting at a connection between Poe and Rey, and it presents itself as a prospective romantic relationship like it did between Luke and Leia.
Mm-hmm.
And Finn is almost like the outsider in that, like Han. Like Finn is in love with Rey, but sees there's this connection between Poe and Rey that he doesn't quite understand, and he thinks it's something it's not. And then Rose just gets written into oblivion the same way they did Jar Jar. She just gets some token role in the next one, and then they forget she exists.
But there's only one movie left. Do you think they can really fit that into a single movie at this point?
Sure.
Yeah. Why not? Sure. 3 hours long. Who cares at this point? Let's just.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts that you kind of want to put out there?
Was there anything I glossed over?
Maybe.
I mean, I think Rey is going to the little boy at the end of the movie,
right?
Where he uses the Force to pull his broom to him and stuff like that,
mm-hmm.
And he's got he got the ring that Rose gave him, with the old symbol of the rebellion on it,
right?
Or Jedi symbol, whichever it was.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely a call to the fact that people are saying it's another way in which they're reinforcing this idea that um, Jedi, strong Force users and Jedi's can come from anywhere.
Right.
That they don't have to have any special heritage or parentage, and that maybe, you know, maybe the harshness they've suffered in their life has something to do with their connection to the Force, and it could just be that, you know, maybe they're just pointing out that, you know, Rey is going to start. They're going to time jump, and Rey is going to be doing what Luke was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
She. I don't know if you saw with just one viewing, but, you know, Luke claimed he was going to the tree to destroy the books, and then Yoda showed up and then actually set the tree on fire, and Luke freaked out. But the books were actually in a drawer on the Falcon at the end, so Rey took them with her. So she has she has all these Jedi teachings and stuff there. So maybe she is going to try to restart the Jedi Order.
So how big of a time jump, realistically, could they get away with?
I think. Well, what has to happen now, right? Like the rebellion is all of like 20 people on the Millennium Falcon at the end of Last Jedi,
right?
And there's definitely a power vacuum at the top of the First Order. So there's some stuff that has to be worked out there, and there's definitely some tension. There's big tension going to be between Kylo and Hux in the next movie, and I think it's something that's probably not going to manifest itself real quick. Like, I think it's something that's going to slowly build over time, and I think we're going to see Hux try to, in Episode 9, I think we're going to see him betray Kylo and take command of the First Order for himself. And I don't know if Kylo necessarily goes to join the rebellion and turns good at that point. I think they're just trying to the whole light side dark thing. They're just trying to kind of bring it into here. Maybe balance of the Force isn't, you know, what we thought it was this whole time. You know,
sure.
Maybe it's like, you know, we just need to get rid of all the light side and all the dark side and just bring it right to here. But I think we're going to see a time jump. I think the First Order, Kylo and Hux are going to have sort of come to an understanding, but Hux is still going to have a lot of resentment towards him. He's basically going to run the operation, and Kylo's probably going to have his own side project, probably trying to hunt down Rey with the Knights of Ren. I think they're going. Part of that time jump is that Leia's going to die, and they're just going to finish that whole thing.
Sure.
And the rebellion are going to have been in the Outer Rim, and they're going to have been rallying their allies in the Outer Rim. One of which will be Lando Calrissian.
Ooh.
Of course.
You think they're actually going to invite him to be in it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You think so? 100%.
He's definitely going to be one of the Outer Rim that they're going to join forces with, and then though of course they're going to kill him in the movie because they're killing all
the old, all the original. But Chewie still going to stick around. In real quick, and then we'll end it. The new trilogy after Episode 9, whenever that comes out or whatever they're planning for that, do they go to the future or do they go way back in the past?
Do you mean, could it be like a separate trilogy, but in the continuing of the line, could it be the sequels to the current trilogy?
Let's just say it's in the. I mean, it still has to do with Jedi or you know the gray or whatever you want to call it, but it's just like it has nothing to do with Skywalkers anymore. It has nothing to do with Solos. It has nothing to do with Rey or Finn or anything like that. It's just its own separate thing, but it's still Star Wars in the way that we know it. Do you go back to like Knights of the Old Republic time, or do you go in the future with this new ideal of what the Force is?
I think it's going to be something brand new, and I think it's going to be in the future. I don't think it's going to go back. Not to say that they don't do like a standalone movie that takes place in the Knights of the Old Republic era, the Old Republic, or yeah, there's so much stuff that would be fucking kick-ass to see on TV, like the Mandalorian Wars and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's going to be a completely custom, brand new trilogy with all new characters, new settings, and a new way of approaching the Force, probably.
But you think we'll have?
Because there's other groups out there that use the Force, that have beliefs about the Force that aren't Jedi and aren't Sith. Like if you go back to Rogue One,
Hmm.
with Donnie Yen's character, yeah, he was a guardian of the Wills, and
Yeah.
apparently when George Lucas was first writing Star Wars, he was writing it as like a historical account from the historical like scrolls of these keepers called the Keepers of the Force, known as the Wills, and then he kind of
Yeah.
dropped
Yep.
that idea,
Yep.
but then they've kind of picked that up and put it
Rebels.
back into canon a little bit with Rebels.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's kind of a guardian of the Wills, and so there's other factions out there that use the Force, believe in the Force, but have a different understanding of it than the Jedi Order or the Sith.
Do you think Maz Kanata is that link? Like, if they take anything from this, because apparently she's been around since like forever and a day.
Yeah, yeah.
Um.
They said that she's super super old.
Yeah.
Like she maybe we find out backstory about Snoke through Maz Kanata because they're like contemporaries
Right.
age wise.
Yeah.
I don't know
She,
her whole thing in the movie. We forgot to completely talk
yeah.
about that.
Yeah. She's just like
It was
a little innuendo going on with that too. It was
it
really
was like
weird.
the dumbest one of the dumbest parts of that whole part of the movie that we both hate. Right? They've got her on the little globe and she's doing her. It's a union dispute. That's fine. That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. But like when the shit is real serious, you have limited time to talk to somebody, and they're like, "We need somebody that can crack security on a first order ship." She's like, "I know exactly who you need, but I can't give you any of his fucking personal information. I can't tell you his name, what he looks like, give you his fucking phone number. All I can tell you he wears a flower on his shirt. Now go find him."
Yeah.
Really? You can tell
That's
me his name. I just and it seemed like the writing was some of the writing in the movie was so lazy. Like, oh, you need a master code cracker. Really? You could have
yeah.
the most generic thing. It's like, what is this? The Italian job?
Hey. Yeah. Yeah, it is. That was my terrible Mark Wahlberg. Yeah.
What's up, donkey?
Yeah.
How's your mother?
What? No. Uh, yeah, that was a weird part. But I wonder if she's going to be the bridge between this set of movies and this new set of trilogies. In some way, I don't know. Hard to say. As long as do something different. But I don't think it's a Star Wars movie without lightsabers involved. For the most part, so they still have to keep that aspect in there, I think.
I know, right? That'd be pretty interesting if you've got like Force users, but they're not. There's no more lightsabers. That would just the idea of that just makes me really sad.
Yeah, and I think that's what they have to do. I don't know. I mean, fuck. I guess we have to believe in Rian Johnson at this point, but the way it's sounding, most people are just like, screw this guy.
Well, it's like with a whole brand new standalone trilogy that's not connected in any way to the Skywalker saga, is what we'll call it. Then I would go into that with no expectations.
Sure.
Not low expectations, but like I went into Rogue One with no expectations, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the weight of all those expectations making me critique everything that happened. I carried that into Last Jedi with me, and it really hurt my viewing experience.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a better experience the next night, partly because I was just so tired and everything. I'm hoping to have a better experience the next time I go.
Sure.
But maybe when he kicks off his new trilogy, I can because it's not going to be connected to anything. It's
you don't know what the hell's going on. You can't.
Yeah, I can just sit there and just fucking enjoy it. And
no
maybe
preconceived notions. Well, I think
I like Rian Johnson as a director. You are the one who actually introduced me to him when 10 years ago you loaned me a copy of Brick.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of stuff that I liked. Was it Looper with Bruce Willis and so like I liked I liked his career, and I got really excited when he got tapped to direct this movie. And I don't agree with all his decisions, but Star Wars fans are really funny. And science fiction fans are really funny in this way. You know, anybody else goes to the movie, watches a movie they don't like, and goes, "Oh, that fucking sucked," and they just go home and
Yeah.
continue living their lives. Star Wars fans go, and it's not something they liked, and it's like, I don't know, it's like relationship
Yeah.
troubles with
Yeah.
long-term relationship. It's like, do I sort this out? Do I just end it? Do we break up? Do we go
Yeah.
to counseling?
Yeah, I know.
You
Can we
know,
talk? Do we need to talk about it more?
do I go get drunk? Am I having suicidal thoughts? How
Thoughts?
do we split? You know, how do we split all the possessions? You know,
Yeah.
like you have to go through this whole fucking 12-step process to reconcile the new information, and then eventually we'll just take Last Jedi for granted. We won't hate it when we watch it. We'll enjoy it for what it
It
is,
is.
and
Yeah.
you know, but
Well, and to start ending this, my whole thing, like once again, I said before, I think it's impossible to please a Star Wars fan at this point, um, with anything. It seems like, and that's what unfortunately Disney has to go to contend with. Also, though, having said that, when we look at like The Force Awakens, everybody's like, oh, okay, this is the movie, or not everybody, but people are like, oh, it's the movie it needed to be, but it was too safe. This comes out, it doesn't take the same beats per se, and it's, it goes a different direction. Everybody's like, fuck you. But when you look at it, looking back at the original trilogy, there was Star Wars, and then there was The Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back is a complete departure from what Star Wars originally was. But the only difference now is that we have Facebook and Twitter and 30 years of lore to bitch about it.
yeah, instead of just having, we can all get together and find people that have the same problems we had, and then we can just validate each other's opinions to the point where we just assume everybody thinks the same thing we do.
Yep.
That whole, even Star Wars has its own echo chamber. I guess what I started to realize, I had my initial feelings. You go on Twitter and everybody on Twitter is like, this was the worst thing to ever happen ever. But then slowly you start to get other people's input,
Yeah.
like I had a mixed reaction, to put it, mildly. But I've got other people that just loved it.
Yeah.
Just thought it was great, just amazing from beginning to end, loved every single sequence of it. I had one friend on Facebook who said that that he had been dealing with grief all weekend because when he watched it Thursday night and Luke died, he bawled.
Oh man.
Like he cried. And the next night he took his teenage son to the movie, and then when it was about to happen, he just reached over and grabbed his son, and as soon as Luke died, him and his son both cried together in the movie theater over Luke dying. I thought it was, I was like, okay, that's kind of a strong reaction. But I was like, but other people are having different experiences with this movie, and and I don't want to invalidate their experiences by crapping all over it too hard.
Yeah, and sure, go ahead, continue.
Oh, I could go for
forever
for as long as you let me.
No, I said it on Facebook on my own personal account. I was just like, I liked The Last Jedi overall in spite of its flaws, but I understand if you didn't. Like I understand.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some things that you just kind of have to take a step back and be like, okay, let's just, time's going to tell with that. I still think that this is going to be a very debated movie, a very probably for a long time one of the more polarizing Star Wars movies to ever come out. And I don't think,
honestly, if you think about it, like the only thing Star Wars fans have ever really agreed on is that Empire Strikes Back is the best one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
besides
no, you're right.
That, like, we've just been a constant civil war with ourselves, and just split up in all these different factions of prequels versus original, and characters versus characters, and lore versus lore, and what's better than this, and I'm one of those people that I actually like the prequel movies because I like them. I like them for all the backstory and the richness and the depth they gave the universe and all these characters that we loved from the original trilogy. I loved pod racing. I thought Darth Maul was fucking awesome.
Yeah, he was. He died.
I really loved the droid clone battle on Geonosis and Clone Wars, and the fight with Count Dooku, and seeing Yoda use a lightsaber for the first time. Like, people shit all over Attack of the Clones. Like
Yeah,
that movie
they
had a
do.
lot of good stuff in it. You know, Revenge of the Sith was great. You know, up until at one point I may have put it like maybe third or second on my list for best Star Wars movies. So like but most people just want to write. People say the prequels were crap and wish they could just make sure they
I
wish
didn't.
they'd never happened.
I didn't think the prequels were complete crap. My problem with the prequels is the writing and the lack thereof, and some of the casting choices. That was my problem with the prequels. I like pod racing. I thought it was a cool moment. Went a little long, but whatever. I thought that was a cool thing to put into Star Wars. I like seeing I'm with you. I like seeing Yoda use a lightsaber. I like the fight with him between Sidious and him in Revenge of the Sith. There's a lot of good things about those prequels, but I think it's just, it seems like it went from entertaining kids and it stopped doing that, and then it started catering to those kids that are now adults, and that's where the disconnect came from.
I think what happened between the original and the prequel trilogies is that, like, Lucas didn't know what the expanded universe was going to be like when he let them start writing books and started letting other people add to it. And he didn't, I think he is somebody who created something. It grew beyond him and his ideas, and he became a nerd for his own creation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I think he read all the books. I think he loved what everybody was adding to it. And like, he saw how in depth all these other people were getting in their explanations and their backs and all this information they were given, and he wanted to get in on that. So he made the prequel trilogy so he could, flesh out all these characters and just really expand, on things and show you all these different planets and all these different races and people and characters. And there were somebody was saying there was even a scene in Revenge of the Sith where Palpatine was going to actually take credit to Anakin for creating him by manipulating the midichlorians, and then basically say, in effect, I am your father. Lucas wrote that into the script, and then they took it out, before they shot the scene.
I wonder why. I mean, I wonder why Lucas did that. Why, like, he just had I wonder what changed his mind.
I think, he had his whole. I think it was his whole rhyming thing taken too far. Where basically we're just going to basically copy, that whole angle and just say Palpatine is Anakin's father. What? I mean, we all pretty much who were really nerdy and dug in assumed it anyway when he told the whole story of Darth Plagueis. We're not even talking about Last Jedi.
No, we're not anymore. We're going to go down this rabbit hole. We probably need to end it. So with that being said, go to Star Wars, watch The Last Jedi, take it for what it is. If you don't like it, that's fine. If you like it, that's fine too. No big deal. It's a movie. That's really what it comes down to, even though some of us do it as, think of it as a religion in a sense. So with that being said, I'm Brian with Nerd Theory. This is Jordan Dill. Say goodbye.
Later, peoples.
And keep on being entertained as long as it's legal.